Chapter 19. The Job. After our brief chat, Niza didn't waste much time. The very next day, I was being transported to UA. I've seen this place from the outside before, but I still can't help thinking it's unnecessarily large. I wasn't handcuffed anymore, though they put a small ankle monitor on my leg so they could track me. Not that I couldn't get rid of it. It was a safety measure for the authorities. It most likely also had a heart rate sensor. The one in charge of me was the ever-energetic Aizawa. I swear, this man looks more and more tired with each passing day. I decided to start a conversation the only way I knew how, by being annoying. So, what's with the bags under your eyes? Have you been shopping lately? He completely ignored the last part and replied calmly. With you gone, the streets have gotten more crowded at night. He was a clandestine hero, now that I think about it, usually operating at night. Damn, the years I was active must have been like a vacation for him. I was hoping the villains wouldn't go berserk without me keeping them in check. I said lazily. This didn't bother me much. I knew I could get back to my patrols after getting a temporary leave of absence. Well, your presence was much more important in suppressing them than we initially thought. Anyway, things will go back to normal. Crime rates won't be zero, but they won't be like they are now. He was right. My absence gave them a huge confidence boost. The novelty would soon wear off, and with the heroes working overtime, the situation was slowly coming under control. We continued chatting for a while, mostly me asking questions and him answering. After a while, I could see the UA wall. Aizawa guided me through the campus and inside the school buildings, giving me a quick tour before leading me to the principal's office. Most of what he showed me was along the way. The rest he only showed in passing. When we reached the door, I could hear some murmuring coming from inside the room. I could sense that Nizu and Tashinori were inside. Nizu was in a high chair, and Tashinori was on a sofa. A lot was on my mind. I wanted to know what I was going to do here. Nizu hadn't specified anything, and I really didn't want to be a janitor. I mean, if I had no other choice, I would, but I wasn't going to be happy about it. Aizawa opened the door and dragged me into the room, probably because he didn't want to waste any more time on his escort mission. I brought you here. I need to get ready for my next class now. After saying that, he just left, snapping me out of my daze. Nizu greeted me energetically. Hello, young Allan. I'm very happy to welcome you to UA. I hope Aizawa told you about some of the facilities. He mentioned a few things. There's just one thing he didn't clarify. I said, pausing, hoping Nizu would notice. He just looked at me expectantly, as if he didn't know what I was talking about. Sighing, I continued, what exactly is my job here? He answered instantly, proving once again that he just wanted to see me fight. Basically, you'll be a combat instructor/training partner for the hero course. He was very animated as he spoke. You'll start as a training partner first, and you'll take some additional courses on teaching. Like Tashinori on the couch over there. He said, pointing at the skinny mite. Tashinori was really being awkward with me. I needed to break the ice. Taking my usual lazy tone, I started talking. Hey, aren't you the guy who's been training Midoriya? He immediately perked up, answering quickly. Oh, yeah. I thought you'd forgotten about that. How's his progress been? We continued like this for a while. We talked a little about his successor. He gradually relaxed during the conversation. Nizu only let us talk for a few minutes. He'd probably noticed Tashinori's behavior too. After all, he was very intelligent. He was probably expecting him to do something like this. Now that my conversation with Tashinori was over, Nizu started again. We should talk about your provisional license. The government wanted you to take a thorough exam, but I don't think it's strictly necessary. You'll have a test next week. It will only have morality questions. A practical test isn't necessary in this particular situation. Nizu probably expected to give me this license without further ado, but seemed his hands were being forced in this situation. Well, I doubt the test will be a problem. Will I be allowed back on the streets after I get the license? This was what had been bothering me for a while. I needed to know if I could still have my nightly routine. Well, that would be a bit more complicated. Nizu didn't sound very pleased talking about it. Tashinori didn't seem too comfortable with the mention of this either. The court ruled that even with a provisional license, you still need to be supervised by a police officer or a pro hero at all times, even while wearing that ankle bracelet. He adopted a neutral tone this time. I was expecting something like this, but needing someone around me at all times would significantly reduce my patrol speed. Isn't there a solution, like using a live camera or something? I still need to be able to cover the entire city if I want to be efficient. Nizu seemed interested in my proposal. I could try to talk to them about this next week. But don't get your hopes up. You might need a supervisor around you for a while anyway. Well, at least they didn't reject me outright. As long as my name is back on the streets, crime will decrease by default. It's a temporary solution, but it'll have to work. All right, this has been an interesting discussion. Principal, I said cheerfully. This conversation had been far more interesting than I expected. I learned enough to almost fully understand my situation. Things were moving at the pace I'd hoped. I'll have someone take you to your dorm. I recommend you familiarize yourself more with the campus and its infrastructure. After that, we said our goodbyes, and I headed to my dorm, guided by none other than Aizawa. I could tell from the sound of his teeth grinding that he wasn't all that happy about being my guide. He probably just wanted to sleep, as usual. I eventually arrived at my room. Aizawa was finally released from his duties, returning to prepare for his next class, which I already know means he's going to sleep. I quickly followed suit, trying out my new bed and getting some rest. Chapter 20. Combat. The next day, I was already summoned to Gym Gamma. My sparring duties were starting much earlier than I expected. Upon arriving at the enormous building, I could only sigh. I'd be sparring with the trainees. I can only hope there are some fun ones in this class. Otherwise, this is going to be a very boring job. Opening the massive door, I saw about 40 students gathered there. Present Mike, Aizawa, and Gang Orca were present. Aizawa introduced me to the students. Your sparring partner today will be Allan. Some of you already know him. He was quite famous as a vigilante. He used to be known as the Yellow Flash. I decided to simply greet them. Looking more closely at the crowd, I spotted 3 familiar faces, just as I had expected. The Big Three were introduced to this group. The group of students must consist of classes 2A and 2B gathered here. They seemed a little confused by my introduction. I could hear some surprised murmurs among them. I suppose some of them didn't know me. How had they missed the news in the last 4 years? Most of them should have heard of me by now. They didn't have many questions left. Most of them already knew me and weren't looking down on me because of my age. First, I want to see how everyone fares fighting in a large group. Both classes will take turns fighting Allan here. The group that survives the shortest amount of time will train twice as much today. Aizawa really liked turning things into competitions. No, it might be necessary to create stronger heroes. The first group was 2A, which included both Nijire Hato and Tamaki Yamajiki. I don't remember much about their teammates, and the only thing I know about their quirks is, oh well, I'm sure I'll remember halfway through the fight. As soon as Aizawa gave me the chance, I quickly started blasting light at them. I used it to momentarily blind them. While they were shielding their eyes, I quickly solidified my light into tentacles and managed to ensnare about 13 people with them. I created this move specifically to fight large groups. The only drawback is that I need to touch the light to keep it solid. I had more lethal attacks this way, but they weren't really effective in combat. Using my tentacles, I eliminated everyone I caught. I started hitting them with each other. I then proceeded to use the fallen students as ammunition, throwing them at the few who remained. Both Nijire and Tamaki managed to avoid being caught and hit along with their classmates. With them, the remaining group numbered about 5. What despicable methods! Mirio said from his side. His voice was very loud. Nijire quickly used her quirk to send a large wave of energy in my direction. I easily dodged it, while Tamaki tried to block my path by throwing one of the remaining students at me with her tentacles. The random student probably had a strength amplification quirk. He used the momentum Tamaki gave him to attempt a dropkick on me. While he was in the air, I grabbed his leg and turned his momentum against him, spinning him around and slamming him into a wall in one swift motion. When I turned around, Tamaki was already trying to wrap his tentacles around me. I'm sure I've seen this in a manga before. I said slowly. I moved back out of his attack range and kicked a beam of light forward, exploding it near him and knocking him unconscious. Only 3 students remained. They quickly grouped together, realizing they had no chance of winning, and tried to buy themselves as much time as possible. That didn't work very well. I appeared right in the middle of them and knocked them out almost instantly. Nijire tried to react, but she didn't even have time to raise her hand. Overall, I don't think Nijire can fly yet. Even if she could, she wouldn't have been able to leave her classmates' backs undefended. Tamaki was quite strong. The rest were fine too, but since I don't know their names, I can't say much about them. Present Mike seemed to be taking notes on their performance, while Orca led the injured to the infirmary. I'm sure Recovery Girl will be pretty angry. At least her injuries aren't serious. She obviously had an easy time with them. All in all, the fight lasted about a minute. Good time, if you ask me. The next group fight ended more or less the same way. Mirio managed to dodge some attacks, letting them pass right through him. I'm sure they weren't even close to my top speed, but that doesn't make it any less impressive. My quirk has much more offensive capabilities than his. Now that I think about it, isn't my quirk also better than his at ignoring attacks? I mean, mine doesn't leave me exposed. But I can't really pass through the floor, so he's got that on me, I guess. Overall, the first group lasted about 3 seconds longer than the last, which means Togata now has to do twice the training, though he didn't seem too upset about it. For now, my work was done. Aizawa said I could go. Although I wanted to meet the big three, I knew I'd have the chance when we did one-on-one fights or in smaller groups. Now I went back to my room. I had plenty of free time. Nizu already sent me some teaching theory. I needed to get to reading that. I couldn't wait to get my license. I'd have to contact Jiren. I can't really go there in person. I'll have to call him when I get a burner. I hope All For One takes some kind of action too, but I know he won't. Unless I attack him, he won't act personally. He doesn't have any nomus right now either. I guess I'll wait for his appearance next year. For now, I've started reading the things Nizu sent me. Chapter 21. Training and Conversation. Nijire's POV. Today, our teacher said we'd be having a joint training session with a neighboring class. I was happy about it. We didn't know what the exercise would entail. We certainly weren't expecting a group sparring match against Japan's most famous hero. Not everyone knew about his fight with All Might, but I'd seen the news report of his capture live. I'd seen him fight All Might and the other pro heroes. He was about our age, maybe a year younger, but he was strong enough to take on the #1 pro hero. While Aizawa was explaining the rules, I could hear some people saying this was going to be easy. They clearly hadn't seen the fight between him and All Might. Maybe they'd only heard about him being captured. But when the fight started, those same people who were so confident were defeated almost instantly. My attacks were too slow to even land a hit. Every wave I launched in his direction was simply ignored or dodged. His attacks were too fast for us, but after recalling the images of his fight against All Might, he was clearly holding back. In the end, even Tamaki was taken down with a single blow. Now it was just me and my 2 other classmates. I couldn't just fly off and leave them open, for goodness sake. In the same instant, I thought I saw him out of the corner of my eye. I didn't even have time to raise my hand before he knocked us all out. I woke up in the infirmary. None of my classmates were hurt. I decided I wanted to learn more about this Allan guy. MC's POV. A week passed quickly. Today was the day of my exam, which meant that tomorrow I'd be back on the streets, this time legally. There were quite a few things on my mind right now. I also need to help out at Gym Gamma again today. I had asked for permission to use some of his training equipment, Nisa demonstrated, but only outside of work hours. So I recently restarted my daily training. I couldn't train for the same amount of time as before. I still had some things to study from Nizu, and I also had to help the professors on campus. Honestly, Nizu called me combat partner/combat instructor, but I think the correct term for my actual position would be unpaid intern. None of the professors asked me to bring them coffee. Luckily, I would have thrown it in their faces. The most I do is deliver files. 13 needed help with his rescue class yesterday. It was with the first-year students. I saw the inside of the school. It was much more impressive in person. I didn't pay much attention to much else there. 13 just wanted me there for a quick demonstration. He told me to rescue someone from the mountain's landslide zone. We simply entered the perimeter of the zone, and the demonstration began. I simply used my speed and perception to quickly reach the rescued person. It was a mannequin. Apparently, they only used real people for testing. I just grabbed it and headed back to the entrance of the area. It took about 4 seconds in total. The students were somewhat surprised. I think this is class 1B. I can't really recognize any of them. But I still said, if it were a real person, I wouldn't be able to go so fast. You should always be mindful of the person you're carrying. I still remind them to be careful with their load during an escort mission. Basic gaming etiquette. Overall, I was having fun. The heroes were an interesting group of characters. I found their personalities amusing. I loved teasing Aizawa. Hizashi was a cool guy. 13 was kind and polite to talk to, and Midnight was a bit odd. I didn't get to talk much with the rest of the teachers and staff. But I have time. I'll be working here for a few years. I'm heading to Gym Gamma now. I think I'm meeting up with the second years again. President might call me for it this time. When I entered the gym, only Class 2A was there. The teachers with them were Ectoplasm, Cementos, and Mike. I greeted them and said hello. Hello, everyone. I hope you didn't wait too long. I'm just gracefully late. I've developed the habit of not always being on time this past week. It helped me relax a bit on my way to work. Well, I'm glad you finally showed up. Hizashi always spoke loudly. It might be due to his quirks. I could see that most of the students were used to his loud voice. Today we'll be doing special movement training. The students seemed excited at the prospect of special movements. They'd probably done them before, so there was no need for an introduction. Hizashi approached me to speak. Your job for today will be to supervise and give advice to the students. I nodded. He continued in a firm but friendly tone. So, how has your first week here been? I heard you really shone in the rescue demonstration. It's been fun staying here. Tell me, how come Aizawa isn't around? Hizashi seemed surprised by my question. Well, since he expelled his entire class this year, he has some free time compared to the rest of us. But not for long. She's currently in charge of Class 2B along with their homeroom teacher until next year. That made sense. Well, I'll take a look around and see if I can help the students with any advice. Hizashi just nodded and wished me good luck. I ran around the classroom for a while, helping out wherever I could. They were all second-year students, and most of them already knew their quirks well enough. I could see Nijire flying around and hitting one of Ectoplasm's clones with her energy blasts. I was curious about her quirk. All I could remember was that it had a high energy consumption. I flew closer to her platform and asked her, "Hey, what's your name?" I couldn't act like I already knew her. She seemed excited. "Oh, my name is Nijire Hado. You must be Allan." I think she got a little distracted from the exercise. We talked for a bit, mostly about her quirks. I told her more about mine, and she seemed she was genuinely curious about my abilities and limitations. Usually, someone who asks so fervently about your strengths and weaknesses doesn't have good intentions. But I can remember that she was a curious person. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. I'll leave you to your training. By saying I'd left her platform, I could already sense that I'd taken up a lot of her training time. We can talk later at lunch sometime, she called out in my direction. I couldn't see her face. I was already on the ground. She probably wanted to know more about my quirk. I avoided giving her too many details in our previous conversation. After that, there wasn't much for me to do. I had an exam to take now, and that's it. I'll bring you the next chapter soon. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it.